real genius of Macintosh, Apple's newest personal computer, isn't its 32-bit microprocessor, or that it captures the power of a mainframe on a board 10 by 10 inches.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to Player One Starts. In the first part of this video, we started a project that is actually the biggest project I've ever attempted on this channel. In that video, I actually tore down the Macintosh Plus, and I started preparing the case for mounting a new screen in there, and possibly putting in something like a Raspberry Pi to emulate things on, to kind of give this computer some new life, because everything inside of it right now is currently dead. If you haven't seen that video, I do recommend seeing it first, and there should be a link popping up somewhere around here letting you know. If not, there's also a link in the description below. Oh, and while we're waiting on everyone to click and view that video first, if you haven't done so yet, please remember to click on that subscribe button and the bell icon to be notified when I make future posts. That said, in this video, I'm actually going to attempt something I've never done before on this channel, and that is, I'm going to try to Retrobright the plastic on this Macintosh Plus. And now that I have all of my materials for that, the first step is actually to clean up the case and get it as clean as I possibly can before I start retrobrighting. So let's go ahead and do that first. So when taking a look at the faceplate here, it doesn't show up well on camera, but there is some buildup of dirt and grime on the front of here that will need to be cleaned off. It is very essential that you clean your pieces very well before you try to retrobright them, or else the process will not be effective. Essentially, you could end up with light and dark spots based on where the dust was when it was being retrobrighted. And as this is my first time trying this process out, I decided to go ahead and do the faceplate and the little battery door on the back so I can have some high contrast areas to compare how effective the process actually is. I'm going to start by cleaning this off with a little all-purpose cleaner. This cleaning solution essentially turns your rag into a dust magnet, and it is one of the least harmful chemicals you can use on older electronics, so I like to start with that first. Then I'll follow it up with a little bit of denatured alcohol to get rid of the more stubborn spots. Alright, that's looking really sharp. Now all I have to worry about are these vents down at the bottom and these recessed areas that show the keyboard and the brightness. For that, I'm going to go ahead and pour a little bit of alcohol into this bowl and use a toothbrush dipped in alcohol to clean out these vents. After that's all done, I'll give this one final rinse in the sink and let it air dry before I start the retrobrighting process. This will ensure that I don't leave any residual cleaning chemicals on the plastic that may interfere with the retrobrighting process. While that's drying, I decided to go ahead and turn my attention to this little battery cover. It has these little cushion pads that hold the battery in place that I will need to remove. I've got the camera really zoomed in here, so you can see that I just used a small flathead screwdriver to kind of peel these off. Since this will be an interior piece and I plan on covering this up again, I don't mind if I scratch the plastic just a little. This actually ended up taking me just a little bit amount of time to make sure I got all of that off. Alright, and my go-to to remove adhesive is actually Goo Gone. So I'm going to go ahead and apply a little on here, I'm going to let it sit for a while, and I'm going to clean it off. If there's any adhesive left behind, meaning I didn't wait long enough before I started cleaning it all back off, I'll have to treat it one more time. Alright, that's looking really good. I got all the adhesive off. I'm going to run this under the sink and then join it with the faceplate. Just cleaning these pieces has actually made a really big difference in how this case actually looks. I can tell it's still slightly yellowed. It's not as bad as some of the other pieces I've seen over the years, but I'm hoping that I'll be able to see a stark contrast when I'm done retrobrighting this. I'm guessing that it's the color correction in my camera that I'm using to shoot this footage, but I can tell you this looks a bit more yellowed in person than it does on camera. Alright, so now that I have that all cleaned up, the next thing I need to do is set up my space for retrobrighting. Now, I have seen several videos out there on YouTube giving you instructions on how to do this, and I'm going to let you know that this video is not meant to be instructional. I am experimenting with this and trying things out for the first time, so I don't really recommend this process. I definitely recommend you see what other people have done and try to come up with a solution for you. At least that's what I've done. And with that in mind, I actually came up with this solution right before I saw someone post another YouTube video where they do something almost exactly the same way I did it. I guess great minds do think alike, but I can't take credit for it completely because I did get the idea from several people who posted on forums. But before I get started, I was actually waiting on a couple of things to come in the mail, and since those are here, let's go ahead and unbox them and show you what it looks like. Alright, so these are two high-powered LED UV lights that I ordered online. These are actually professional-style stage lights, and I think these will do the trick. I will say first off that I am very impressed with the build quality of these lights. I just ordered two of the cheapest ones I could find that would fit my specifications, and these things are really solid. But the real test will be powering it on. Whew, that is really bright. It doesn't appear that way because my camera is trying to compensate, but it is making everything glow in here even with all the other lights on. And yeah, this thing is putting out a lot of heat. I don't think I've ever felt so much heat come from an LED. And yeah, anything that is even slightly reflective to UV light is glowing, so it looks like this is going to work. So here's a room in my house I actually don't ever show in my show, and that's because this is actually part of my laundry room where my furnace is and the water heater, and it gets kind of noisy in here as you can hear. But this is actually the perfect spot for me to mount a couple of those lights so I can put a little container underneath here and try this experiment out. Oh yeah, and here's what it looks like with those UV lights on, and it looks kind of trippy. I don't know if you guys can see this because the background is white as well. Oh, I have dust on my shirt. Anything that is even a little bit reflective to UV light is glowing extremely bright right now. So you can hear the UV lights. As you can see here, it's kind of making the warning sticker on my dehumidifier there glow, as well as the extension cord and my smart plug here is kind of picking up some of the light. That's actually the Rock Band drums that I've had for a while. The green is very fluorescent. The other ones aren't really glowing that much. That's kind of strange. In fact, I have a fluorescent light off to the side here, which is now off. That looks like it's kind of on but dim because it's just slightly glowing. Anyway, this is what the piece looks like in front of the UV light, and we're going to try to go ahead and Retrobright this and see what happens. So let's go ahead and see what that looks like. So I'm going to fill this tub up with warm water up until about the top of this piece. And then I'm going to top that off with this 40 volume high strength hydrogen peroxide. I'm going to turn off the lights and turn on the UV. Wow, this is actually very bright. It doesn't look that way on my camera because it is trying to auto-adjust to the amount of light being thrown out from this UV system. Messing with my settings, I was able to get it to show this, but this still doesn't even do it justice as to how bright this is in person. Well, that said, I'm going to go ahead and let this work its magic, and I'm going to stay in a room that's not in here so I'm not exposed to all this UV light. Although I will be back in to check on this every 30 minutes to an hour. And that is due to the fact that there are going to be a lot of bubbles that form on top of this plastic, and eventually it will make it float to the top, and I'll have to readjust it, as shown here about an hour into the process. Alright, so this seems to be working, and I am very excited to check on the results of this. I'm actually very nervous that I'm going to leave this in too long, so I'll be checking on this every 15 to 30 minutes. But now that that process is actually going, I can turn my attention to the back case. So now I'm going to turn my attention back to the second half of this case. As you can see, there's some residue here in the bottom I need to clean up, and I'm going to go ahead and start out with some alcohol to see if that'll clean up better. And to tell you the truth, I'm still not sure exactly what this is. If this is some sort of residue from the capacitors that have leaked, or if this is just residue left over from water damage. Alright, now that that's cleaned up, I'm going to turn my attention to the exterior of the case and start the whole process I did with the front part, beginning with using some all-purpose cleaner. I didn't get very far until I noticed that one of the rubber feet on the bottom is actually missing, and I figured it'd be a good idea to remove these feet anyway before I try to retrobright the plastic, as I'm pretty sure that process will degrade these feet very significantly. So again, I just used a flat tip screwdriver and went ahead and peeled off the rubber feet. And no, I don't plan on saving the rubber feet, I plan on replacing them with different feet. I think I have something that'll work for that. But now that we got that out of the way, I can continue cleaning. Alright, now that we're almost done with this, I'm going to go ahead and rinse it off and then check on the retrograding process. So this is after about 4 hours of sitting in this solution being exposed to UV light. And you can tell the process has been working because there are bubbles all over the plastic. I didn't capture footage for all the times I came down and checked on this, but it was about every half hour I had to come down and check to make sure the piece didn't float to the top, because sometimes it did. Hopefully it did not affect the process. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and take the piece out and see how it matches against the back of the case. Well, again, I'm having difficulty getting it to show up on camera, but you may be able to tell that there is actually a big difference between the two tones of the plastic now. This contrast was shown a lot better on the battery cover. So yeah, I am really excited. I've been wanting to do something like this for quite a while, and now that I know I have a reliable method that won't ruin my plastic, I might just have to do this to a few other consoles in my collection. But for now, I'm going to have to try to come up with a solution for this back piece. Well, I ran into a snag here where the bottom half of this piece will not fit with the lights I had mounted up here. So I came up with a different solution where I just moved it off beside the cabinet but still on the shelf, and I suspended the lights from the ceiling. Oh yeah, and I just found this random tote that I used to store Christmas decorations in. So right now all those Christmas decorations are just sitting out in my garage, and I'm using the tub temporarily, as it is the only tub in my house big enough to fit this piece into. And I'm not quite sure how many gallons this tub holds, but I decided not to go ahead and fill this up here, so I'm going to fill this up on my laundry sink and then move it back over here if I can. And that worked out for the most part. I was able to get it over halfway full, but it was just a bit too heavy when I had it all the way filled. So I will still have to top this off before I start adding the hydrogen peroxide. And because this piece is so big and uses so much water, I had to use 2 bottles of hydrogen peroxide to be able to get the solution strong enough. I'm not quite sure how long this is going to take compared to the smaller piece, but it's all set for now and I can turn my attention back to the faceplate.
Alright, so this part didn't go exactly as planned. I had to modify my setup to accommodate this large piece. But I also didn't plan for having to fill up a much larger tub all the way with water and hydrogen peroxide. So again, this is another blind test for me. I don't know if this is going to work, but at least I'm going to try it out. For now, I'm going to turn my attention back to the front case now that it's done, and I can start mounting the screen.
So, believe it or not, I have never owned any sort of Dremel tool, but I've wanted to get one for quite a while. And I thought, what better time than when I actually need one? This particular toolkit that I got came with a whole bunch of different accessories, which is one of the reasons why I went with this one, but I think price was also the other factor, as I didn't have too much money to spend on one of these. I will note that I am not endorsing this product, and I'm not endorsed by this product, I'm just showing you what I got. And now for the part that may be a bit cringeworthy. So I can't get this screen to fit unless I modify this little plastic piece that juts out. I'm not quite sure what purpose this serves, but I've actually found out that I can definitely get rid of this without losing any functionality of the case. And I'll probably need to sand this down a little bit, but yeah, that doesn't look too bad. Let's do a test fit of the screen, and... oh yeah, that is much better. Looks like this is going to be just about a perfect fit for this. Alright, now I'm excited to get the screen bezel on here, so I'm going to go ahead and get my epoxy ready. And it turns out the dimensions of my bracket are just a smidge off. So my quick and dirty solution is actually just to cut this in half so I don't have to wait for a whole new piece to print. The cap was a bit stubborn to come off, and then this happened. Yeah, well, I probably should have been a bit more careful, but on the plus side, I already have some epoxy here, so I'm going to go ahead and just stick this right back on. And I'm going to basically batter the front of the bezel and then stick it to the back of the case. As this stuff is fast curing, I'm going to have to be quick with this, so I'm just going to show you in quick little snippets how I got this glued on the back of the case. The pieces acted like they didn't want to stay, so I actually had these clips handy. Thankfully I didn't actually need them because the pieces actually eventually just stuck, and I'll have to wait 30 minutes for this to cure, so I'm going to go ahead and check back on the Retrobright. Here it's actually been about 4 hours later, and I'm actually not seeing much of a difference. If you look very closely, you can tell there are some bubbles, but the process is working a lot slower. This was something I was afraid of, as I had to have a much larger volume container that could accommodate this piece. I went ahead and moved the piece around a little bit and made sure the water was still warm, which it is, so I'm going to go ahead and give this another 4 hours and see if it makes any difference.
So yeah, what you saw there was about 4 hours into it. And so what I decided to do for now is I'm actually going to reheat some of the water separately and then pour it back in to give it some heat. And then I'm going to rotate this piece about every 30 minutes to make sure that each side gets an even exposure. And yes, it looks like it's going to take much longer for this piece to retrobright than I initially planned for. So we'll see how long this actually takes. But I also ran into another issue. I wasn't running my camera for this or anything because I was just doing a test fit of the screen. And I was coming up with a way that I could use the existing mounting brackets. And I came up with a way to do that. I actually drilled the holes to make them bigger. And while I was fitting the mounting bracket on and screwing it in for the first time, I immediately heard a crunch. I broke the screen. And yes, this screen is definitely broken. I can tell because I work around broken screens all the time, and I knew as soon as it happened what I had done. At the time of recording this video, some of the online retailers are talking about only shipping essential items, and it appears my replacement screen is not an essential item. So I'm kind of stuck at this point with the screen. Not only that, but I'm also stuck with this Retrobright that is taking forever. And I haven't even gotten to the part of setting up a Raspberry Pi to emulate a Macintosh Classic, so I'm not really sure exactly how this project is going to turn out, but I'm going to have to end this video here. And I got a little bit inspired because I do have to end this video on a cliffhanger, so here's a little clip showing you what I still have to deal with.
Will Tyler get another screen? Will the Retrobright dissolve the back of the case before it finishes retrobrighting? Does Tyler have any idea how to emulate a Macintosh on a Raspberry Pi? All of these answers and more in the thrilling conclusion, Part 3 of Player 1 Star. Alright, so that said, that's actually going to wrap it up for this video. Remember, if you like what you see, please give this video a thumbs up, leave a comment below, let me know what you liked about today's video. If you have any suggestions for me in the next part of this video, please let me know in the comments below as well. Stay tuned for part 3 coming out next week as scheduled. As always, I want to thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned because I have more content coming, and I'll see you in the next one. If you like this video and you'd like to help out with future projects on this channel, please consider supporting me on Patreon. Also, if you enjoy the content of this channel, please remember to click on this subscribe button. Again, I want to thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.